Hey there, it's Seth Dellinger. I'm the creator of the Reimagining Asana program, which uses the Feldenkrais method to help you refresh your yoga practice. So today we're going to look a little bit at the cat and cow movements, and in particular, how do you find support over the 4 points on the floor? Now, cat and cow leading into downward dog are what you might call symmetrical movements. They happen right down the middle. But the fact is, none of us are actually symmetrical. So in this process, you'll get to kind of investigate your own patterns a little bit and discover biases you may have, play with some movements that would be outside of your normal movement patterns, and I think you'll find by the end you have quite a new sense of balance. So I hope you enjoy this. If you do, please like the video, subscribe, and there'll be more videos like this coming soon. But for now, let's get into the movement. Start out on your hands and knees. And just shift your weight a little forward and a little back. And you can move your head a little more over your left hand and a little more over your right hand. Notice what you do with your pelvis when you do that. And then find a comfortable place and just try to sense if you have a little more weight on one hand than the other, or perhaps a little more weight over one knee. And now begin to round your back. Lift the middle of your back to the ceiling as you lower your head to look down underneath, tucking your tail under. And then reverse the movement. Lift your head, allowing your back to arch, allowing your belly to drop, lifting your tail. And go back and forth between these two movements. Just feel how this is for you right now. Make the movement within the range that's comfortable for you. And then pause. You can take your weight off your hands for a moment. And then when you're ready, come back to the same thing. But this time, as you make the movement, every time you raise your head to look out in front of you, just notice, are you bringing your weight a little more over one hand? And so if you notice that you're doing that, can you now do that deliberately? So your head maybe doesn't move straight forward, but there's a sense of turning to look a little to one side now. And notice, how do you orient your pelvis when you do this? You can still make the movement of rounding, but every time you lift your head, you deliberately are going to one side, just whatever side seems more natural to you. And now, come all the way down onto the floor and rest on your back. And as you rest, knowing that you just made this asymmetrical movement, going to one side, is there something that you feel about the way your shoulders rest on the floor, or the way your pelvis is resting? Something you can feel that reflects the asymmetry of the movement you were just making. Try rolling your head a little left and right to notice if there's any different feeling in your neck as the head goes to the left and as the head goes to the right. And now come back up onto all fours and resume these two movements, rounding yourself and lifting the middle of your back to the ceiling as you look underneath and tuck your tail, and then lifting your head to the horizon as you lift your tail and you let your belly drop. But now each time you do the movement, can you bring your head to the other side? Can you bring the weight more over the other arm? And find out, how do you have to adjust all the way through your back as you do this? Notice which side of your torso is getting longer when you do this. And now make one movement where you're shifting the weight more over your right arm, and then one movement where you're shifting the weight more over your left arm. You're still rounding your back in between each time. And then again, pause, come back down and rest again on your back. And just see if you notice any difference in how you rest on the floor now. Notice where you feel the movement of your breathing internally. Then bend your knees, roll to your side, and come up onto hands and knees again. Begin to round your back, lifting the middle of the back to the ceiling, looking under, tucking the tail, and then lifting your head and tail, letting your belly drop. But as you go back and forth now, pay attention to where you take your weight in the moment of rounding and looking under. And maybe this time you could pay particular attention to how your weight comes over your knees. And now deliberately begin to shift your weight more onto one knee than the other, whichever side seems to come most naturally for you right now. And then you make the movement of lifting your head and looking forward. But every time you round, you come to one side. And then again, pause. If you don't want to come all the way down on your back, you can just sit back a moment, taking the weight off your arms. And then when you come back, of course, take the weight more over your other knee when you round your back. And again, feel how this is different. When you take your weight over this knee, which arm do you rely on more? And then alternate the movement. So once you're coming more over the left knee, and once you're coming more over the right knee. And notice, again, how do you use your arms in each of these two situations? Okay, and leave it alone. Come down to rest on your back. Just notice each time you rest, does it feel like your back is meeting the floor in a slightly new way? Maybe there's new places that seem to sink into the floor. Roll to your side, come up onto hands and knees again. And now just find out, what is it like to make these two basic movements, but thinking more about staying in the middle as much as you can, having an even distribution of the weight over your two arms and over your two knees. Just see if that feels simpler than it did in the beginning. And now take your head a little to the left and take your pelvis a little bit to the right. And then take your head a little to the right and your pelvis a little bit to the left. And go back and forth like that for a moment. And just see if you feel a little more comfortable with your head on one side. So now stay with your head to one side and feel that you have more weight on one arm and more weight on the other knee. And maintain your weight in this distribution as you both round yourself and as you arch and lift your head. So you make both of the movements, but the whole time you're really positioned more over one arm, more over the knee that is diagonally opposite to the arm. And then come down onto your back and take a rest. But if you were to imagine a diagonal line now, from one hip to the opposite shoulder, and compare each of the two diagonal lines, does one of those lines feel clearer right now? So finally, come up one last time, and now position your head over the other arm, bringing your weight over the second knee, and maintain this position again as you round an arch. And once you've made a few movements like this, alternate between these two diagonals. Round an arch once or twice with your head to the left and your pelvis to the right, and then make a couple of movements like this with your head to the right and your pelvis to the left. Just going back and forth. And then one last time, pause, but then come back to your sense of making the movement right through the middle. And just feel, what's the sense of balance? What's the distribution of effort between your arms and legs? And then, if you would like, after this preparation, find out what it feels like now to lift up and back into downward dog.